What's something your family raised you doing, that you later learned, was really weird? Grew up in a hoarder house. I look back at my childhood now, and can't believe the cluttered nightmare I grew up in. Now I relish throwing things away, when I'm done with them. I'm just glad you escaped the habit. So many children of hoarders, seem to grow up doing the same thing their parents did. I absolutely would have become a hoarder like my dad, if I had not watched the TV show, Hoarders. My house, growing up, wasn't near as cluttered as so many hoarder homes, but our basement was full of crap my dad didn't want to get rid of. When I watched the show, though, I saw so many of my own behaviors being thrown back at me. I was horrified. Started decluttering like crazy, and do a spring clean, once a year, of things we just don't need. My partner also grew up with a hoarder mom, so he also struggles, but we're working on it, LOL. Before I was totally competent, swimming by myself, my mom would put a life jacket on me, tie a long piece of nylon rope to it, and chuck me in the river. She'd basically swim me on a leash down the river, for fun. Mom, you are the classiest redneck. At least she prioritized safety. My uncle threw my cousin, in the harbor, to teach him to swim. He was proud. He only had to go in after my cousin 3 times, before my cousin could swim. At my son's second birthday party, some jackass friend, of my ex-husband, picked my 2-year-old son up and threw him in the pool. I had to quickly jump in after him, fully clothed. The friend thought it was hilarious, and since my ex-husband was, and is, useless, I took it upon myself to punch the effer, right in the face. Oof, I had similar happen to me at my aunt's house, but I was 7. A lady heard I didn't like to go underwater, so, thought it would be funny, to throw me in the shallow end of the pool. I broke 3 toes. My dad shouted in that lady's face, until she left in fear. Catholic mother, Muslim dad, neither really practicing. We celebrated Christmas though, and on Christmas Eve night, instead of doing the normal Christmas stuff, like cookies, milk, etc., my dad would loudly pretend to violently chase Santa out of the house, by yelling and cussing him out, and throwing his shoe at him, which we would later find in places, like the fireplace. Edit, huh, didn't think this would be that big a deal, LOL. Yes, we did get presents. The gag was, that after my parents put them out, my dad would pretend to catch Santa, in the act, and boisterously chase him off, back up the chimney, hence, the unforgettable image, of the thrown shoe, in the unlit fireplace. It's adorable. 30 years later, as a Santa-believing child, it was a little disconcerting. Especially since, Christmas with my mother's side of the family, saw this Santa guy, treated with such reverence. Not cleaning. My mom didn't know how to clean, and so, couldn't really teach us, either. We had this fungus growing out of the carpet at one house, that looked like cooked lasagna noodles. We would just kick it out of the way, when it sprouted up, or my mom would buy a new rug, and put it on top of the old rug. Especially, if the old rug was stuck to the floor, from filth or something. I didn't think anything of it, and would have friends over, who probably talked all kinds of shit about me, afterwards. But they kept coming over anyways, so, I guess they weren't that turned off. My mom always blamed us kids for the state of the house. When we all moved out and nothing changed, she blamed my dad. When they moved cities to a new place, after seeing the state of her new apartment, I could tell, it's just a personal problem, and she doesn't care enough to do deep cleaning things. Clutter everywhere, dirty ass floors, dust and dander. My house is absolutely spotless, and she watched it, while we were out of town for 2 months. Came home, and it smelled like a zoo. My backyard was totally trashed, and she moved a bunch of my things around. She truly is a strange woman, and needs some motivation in her life. In the summer, my dad used to get us up, myself and 3 siblings, at 9 a.m., give us breakfast, and then boot us out of the house, and lock the back and front doors from the inside. We weren't allowed back inside, until the street lights came on, unless it was only using the washroom, or getting a drink. Our ages were 10, 9, 7, and 4, the first time he did it, because he told me, "You're old enough to look after them on your own, now, and, you're not sitting around the house on your fat asses all day." My stepmom never questioned it, because she figured, that he was just getting us to play outside, for a few hours. Once my second youngest sister, the 7-year-old, got heat stroke, and my dad was pissed, that he had to drive us all to the hospital, and waste time. Realized when I was 14 to 15, that he just wanted us out of the house, so he could drink and watch NHL. We never really questioned why he was kicking us out, because the other kids that lived on the street were also outside, around the same time as us. Once we were invited into my brother's friend's house to play his Wii, and we were like, "You allowed to go inside and play the Wii? WTF?" Edit, for those mentioning the Wii, this was around 2006. Edit 2, for those concerned with how we ate, yes, we did eat during the day. My dad sometimes would put fruit, or something, out on the back deck table, but usually, we'd get food from friends' parents, we'd find cash lying around, and save up enough to get candy from the dollar store. There was a farm near the house, and we'd eat the chives that grew naturally on the side of the property, or steal crab apples, tiny green apples, that are super sour, from their trees. Using a ship's bell to call for dinner. My parents got tired of yelling for us, so they mounted a ship's bell to the hallway wall. They would ring it for dinner, and any other occasion, when they needed our attention. Like Pavlov's dog, I get hungry whenever I hear a ship's bell ring. We had a dinner bell, too. Our neighborhood had very few fences, and a lot of little kids, so it was quite common for us to be 3 to 4 houses away, playing on someone else's swing set, or climbing someone else's tree. Mom always had given her permission for us to leave, so it's not like we'd run off, but she didn't want to have to schlep all over, looking for us, when it was dinner time. So, instead she rang the bell in the yard, and we came home from wherever we'd been. If we were going a bit farther away, for any reason, she'd send us with a walkie-talkie, range of 1 mile, in case we couldn't hear the bell from where we ended up. When I became an adult, I was shocked to find out that other families did things with their kids. My mom was a shopper, my dad golfed and played cards at the club. We never had any family activities, like hiking, camping, bowling, or anything, in the 60s and 70s. When I had things my parents could have come to watch, they never did. My daughter was a good tennis player, and I spent every afternoon and all weekends with her, playing. She did get a full-ride tennis scholarship in Hawaii for college. I don't think I had one real conversation with my dad. When he was dying, I asked him if he could tell me he was proud of me. He said, "I'll think about it." That shit F's you up for life. Having your teen partners just move in. My brothers both had their girlfriends move in with us when they were 14 and 15, due to their home life being rough. When I was 14, my boyfriend of 3 months got kicked out, so he moved in with us, no questions asked, for 2 years. Several of our friends also just moved in with us. We took in strays, too. All 3 kids, who are in their 20s now, all had friends, or significant others, move in. We couldn't stand the thought of young teens living on the streets, because that's where they were headed, and we had the room. My parents did the same. One of those strays ended up being my husband. We have been happily married for 12 years. Sleeping in the same bed for 25. My parents are saints. They recently took in my cousin's 14-year-old. She was a total degenerate. Stole from them in the middle of the night, played loud music at all hours, skipped school, vaped, actively trying to get pregnant, etc. My mom took it so hard when she finally relented and had her brought to a group home. This child got mad at someone she lived with and decided to handle her own feces and smeared it all over this other kid's stuff. She got kicked out of the home and brought to her aunt's house. The aunt is a whole other story. Within 2 days, she attacked her aunt. My mom still thinks she should have been able to help her. Sometimes, no amount of love and hugs and respect will fix what is broken. I remind my mom, at least once a week, that her 2 kids are thriving, and my happiness in my marriage is a direct result of her and my dad, and how they interact with people. My brother has been divorced twice, but he still plays golf with his second ex. Whistling for each other. My mom didn't like yelling up the stairs. Apparently, an easier solution for waking up them and addressing whomever she needed was to stand at the bottom and give a couple of sharp whistles. We would approach the top of the stairs, and from the bottom, she'd tell us what she needed. Time for dinner? Whistle. I want you to come downstairs? Whistle. When I whistled for my, at the time, husband, he got irritated and said he wasn't a dog. I thought about it, and I was like, huh. I guess you're right. I now feel like whistling is disrespectful, and I'd never do it. At the same time, I have no problem that this is how our house went. It was more peaceful than shouting, and less work than walking. Just one of those weird family quirks, I guess. My family has a special family whistle, just 3 short notes, then 1 long note. If we were out, in a crowded place, and I heard that whistle, I knew my mom or dad was looking for me. My mother's family did the same, when she was young, so, I was the second generation to learn this. All my cousins' families do it also. We were not allowed to have a drink with our meals. It could be the driest food ever, or you could be thirsty as all hell. Nope, no water, finish the meal first. Bathing or showering, only on Saturday evenings. I must have smelled so bad, back then, especially since my dad smoked in the house. It was to save money on the water bill. But a pack of cigarettes a day was in the budget. We only ever ate chili, with mashed potatoes, and applesauce. I thought everyone did this, till like grade 11, when I had dinner at a friend's house. Her mom put out chili, and I asked if they had any applesauce. They all looked at me, like I was nuts, lol. My partner can't eat pork without applesauce. It's literally the only time he eats applesauce. He just dips his pork in, and eats the combo, regardless of how the pork is seasoned. If I had friends over, my mom wouldn't allow me to offer them anything to eat, nor anything to drink, except bottled water. They also weren't allowed to use the upstairs washroom, they had to use the tiny one in the basement. They also weren't allowed to sit on any of the couches, and half the time, not even on the chairs. Fairly certain, my mom was trying to make visits by friends as unwelcoming as possible, so they wouldn't visit and ditch me as a friend. She thought that all that mattered was studying and getting good grades, and she was more than willing to sacrifice my social life for happiness to ensure that I got good grades. I remember once, my mom got mad that my next-door neighbor ate a lot when he came over. I had no idea, I wasn't supposed to say anything. So, I said something to him. It made him feel bad. I got in trouble. Blah blah. Looking back, and now, as a parent myself, I can't imagine getting upset that a child is hungry. I'll feed them 7 different meals, if they need it. Our parents were so weird. My mom fed everyone who came over. Like full spread with snacks and drinks. Even fed the vacuum salesman, who stopped by one night, trying to sell us a $2,000 vacuum. His boss showed up, and was pissed that he was sitting there eating. Poor guy said, he's been going door to door all day, and hasn't eaten yet. We did not buy a vacuum, though. Whenever it was one of our birthdays, my father made us keep a pen and pad next to the phone to list everyone who called, and when. He'd then keep a blacklist of everyone who didn't call, or didn't call in a timely fashion. For example, the closer you were related, the earlier in the day you should call, under his rules. I didn't realize this was messed up until I was an adult and had a lot of therapy. Until the day she died, my grandmother kept a list of every single gift she gave and received, with a price next to it. She wanted to make sure she always got what she was owed. Not cleaning our bathtubs. In the 18 years I spent living with my parents, I probably cleaned my bathtub 3 times. We just considered it normal for it to be moldy and dirty. At least that's how I saw it, because my parents just never talked about it. When I was a teenager, my mom started giving me tasks to do around the house. I would sweep and mop the floors, I would clean the surfaces, I would clean the toilets and sinks. But the bathtubs were never mentioned. They were just never in my radar as something I needed to clean, and my parents never said otherwise. It was when I moved out and lived with roommates, and eventually romantic partners, that I realized this wasn't normal. Now I gag when I visit my parents, and I have to take a shower in those disgusting bathtubs. Upon arriving home in the evenings from somewhere, my parents would have one of us kids wait in the car, while the other went inside, got their shotgun, and went through every room in the house and backyard to make sure we were okay to enter. I was unaware that my mom was being followed around by a very dangerous man, and I was checking to make sure he wasn't waiting inside the house. I'm not sure why, but it seemed like a good idea to be safe. I assumed they were looking for bears. My parents are really germophobic, and my dad think he has to kill the bacteria on the bread when he buys it fresh, so he puts it in the oven to toast, and almost effing burns it. He thinks that whoever did the bread sneezed, or accidentally spit on it, In my country, we eat bread almost every day. I thought everybody did this. This is insane. Not flushing the toilet at night. Our toilet used to be fed by a rainwater reservoir that was stored in a cupboard up high, in my parents' room. When you flushed, it used to drip for a while, and would disturb them. Can't blame them. I just got used to doing it, and when I moved in with my girlfriend, she was disgusted that things were left until the morning. Can't blame her, either. In high school, my dad had a rule: if you've done it, I've done it. And if you and your friends are going to do it in the house, and have them stay the night. Coupled with, if you ever need a ride, you can call me, to pick you up. He was talking about drugs and drinking. He wasn't encouraging it, but allowing a safe space. This was one of the better things in my childhood. I didn't realize how weird it was, that when I was in 7th grade, my birthday or Christmas gift was porn mags. Probably randomly taken from my stepdad's massive collection, like 40+ large garbage bags full. I ended up having some of the strangest sexual relationships out of anyone I know, and I think it was because it was so weirdly normalized in my house. At the time, I was just annoyed, because it was basically an on-gift. He had so much porn stored, I could have filled my closet, and he wouldn't have noticed it gone missing. I didn't have to seek it out. Not me, but a friend from years ago. Their family never said, "I love you," to one another. We were in our late teens or early 20s, they mentioned they'd only heard it a handful of times. My family says it liberally. I remember hugging them before they moved out of state, saying "I love you," and pull away, to see them crying. Changing clothes in the living room and terrace. Because parents say, it's dirty, if you are still wearing outside clothes, while going in your bedroom. I just noticed this is weird, when I was older and friends came by, and they were surprised, when my dad casually stripped to his underwear, on our terrace. Parents are still doing it, but not when a total stranger is around now. I talked about how it's weird. But they do it when they already know someone close enough. And I had to warn my boyfriend about it, before he came around. He's now getting used to it. My family drives everywhere, and doesn't stop. Sleep in shifts in the car, share the responsibilities of driving. There are a total of 3 stops in a day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. If you gotta go to the bathroom, you wait until the next stop. There are no other stops. And I legitimately mean that. There is no, but what about? No. I was raised, that you gotta figure out a way, to hold it. 24-hour trips from Minnesota to Texas. 3 stops, maybe 4. 12-hour trip from Minnesota to Indiana. 1 stop. 26 hours to Washington State, 3 stops. Maybe 4. That was my standard growing up, and I was used to it. Getting to college and riding with other people was so eye-opening, and honestly very painful, because driving a 3-hour trip, and having to stop at all was, and still is, absurd to me, and I have friends that would legitimately stop 2 or 3 times for breaks. I've relaxed a bit with marriage, and kids of my own. But most of the time, I try to cut down on stops, as much as possible. Giving each other back massages. My sisters and I grew up in a house where my mom and dad would always offer to rub our backs, or play with our hair, to help us wind down for bedtime, so we grew up thinking that it's normal to exchange daily back rubs with your family. Is this weird, or normal? I still don't know. But my sisters and I still do this when we go visit each other, and we seem to be the only family who does. I never see my husband's sisters start a back rub train on the couch while they're watching a movie during Christmas break. It's just us. LOL. Starting to think that we are the weird ones. I've had several people tell me that I eat weird in relation to the order I eat my food, because generally, I still eat the way I was taught as a kid. As a kid, we were taught to eat all our non-potato vegetables first, then the potatoes, then meat. I thought that was how everyone ate, until years later, eating with other people, they'd be all concerned that I didn't like the meat that was served, because I hadn't touched it yet. Asked Mom about it once, and her reasoning was that since we were never made to finish everything on our plate, if we were too full to finish, at least we would have eaten our vegetables. And any meat that was left over was generally put in our sandwich for lunch the next day, instead the usual Vegemite sandwich. The poop knife. My family poops big. Maybe it's genetic, maybe it's our diet, but everyone births giant logs of crap. If anyone has laid a mega poop, you know that sometimes it won't flush. It lays across the hole in the bottom of the bowl, and the vortex of draining water merely gives it a spin, as it mocks you. Growing up, this was a common enough occurrence that our family had a poop knife. It was an old rusty kitchen knife that hung on a nail in the laundry room, only to be used for that purpose. It was normal to walk through the hallway and have someone call out, "Hey, can you get me the poop knife?" I thought it was standard kit. You have your plunger, your toilet brush, and your poop knife. Fast forward to 22. It's been a day or two between poops, and I'm over at my friend's house. My friend was the local dealer, and always had guests over, because you can't buy weed without sitting on your ass and sampling it for an hour. I excuse myself, and lay a gigantic turd. I look down, and see that it's a sideways one, so I crack the door and call out for my friend. He arrives, and I ask him for his poop knife. "My what?" "Your poop knife," I say. "I need to use it. Please." WTF, is a poop knife? Obviously he is one, but maybe he calls it by a more delicate name. A fecal cleaver? A dung divider? A guanoglaive? I explain what it is I want, and why I want it. He starts giggling. Then laughing. Then lots of people start laughing. It turns out, the music stopped, and everyone heard my pleas through the door. It also turns out that none of them had poop knives, it was just my effed up family with their effed up bowels. FML. I told this to my wife last night, who was amused and horrified at the same time. It turns out that she did not know what a poop knife was, and had been using the old rusty knife hanging in the utility closet as a basic utility knife. Thankfully, she didn't cook with it, but used it to open Amazon boxes. She will be getting her own utility knife now. Edit. Common question: why was this not in the bathroom instead of the laundry room? Answer: we only had one poop knife, and the laundry room was central to all three bathrooms. I have no idea why we didn't have three poop knives. All I know is that we didn't. We had the one. Possibly because my father was notoriously cheap about the weirdest things. So, yes, we shared our poop knife.